You are 31 years old and working for a mid-sized asset management firm in Zurich when your mentor dies. Not of old age, not of illness. He is found in his car in a parking structure near the lake. No signs of struggle, no note, no explanation that the police find satisfying. His name was Werner Haas and he was 64, and he had been teaching you for 6 years how money moves through the world in ways that never appear on any statement. You are the one who clears out his office. You are the one who finds the drive taped underneath the second drawer. You do not open it immediately. You are careful enough to wait, and that carefulness is the first signal to whoever is watching that you might be worth keeping. 3 days after Werner's funeral, a woman sits down across from you at the cafe you visit every morning. She is perhaps 50, dressed without ostentation, and she places her hands flat on the table as though she wants you to notice they are empty. She tells you that Werner spoke highly of you. She tells you that the drive contains information that does not belong to you, and that there are 2 ways this conversation ends. Then she waits. You ask her what the second way looks like. She almost smiles. She says, the same way Werner's did, except they would not be so gentle about the staging. You give her the drive. She gives you a card with a single phone number and tells you to think carefully about whether you want to understand what Werner actually did for the last 20 years of his life. She leaves without ordering anything. You sit for a long time looking at your coffee going cold, and you understand, with the particular clarity that only genuine danger produces, that your life has already changed. The only question is whether you are the one who changes it, or whether someone does it for you. You call the number. What follows is not a recruitment so much as an education. Over the next 8 months you are introduced, carefully and in sequence, to a structure so large and so deliberately invisible that your first reaction is not awe but a kind of vertiginous disbelief, the way you might feel looking down from a building taller than you realized you had climbed. The organization has no name that anyone uses seriously. It has no headquarters, no charter, no public-facing entity of any kind. What it has is capital, patient, ancient, compounding capital, distributed across hundreds of shells, trusts, foundations and nominee accounts spanning 43 jurisdictions, and it has relationships, which is a word that in this context means leverage, obligation, and the kind of mutual assured understanding that makes contracts unnecessary. Werner, you learn, was one of 6 regional coordinators. His territory was Central Europe and the Levant. He managed the flow of funds into and out of approximately 30 active accounts at any given time, accounts that were used to finance arms dealers, opposition movements, private intelligence contractors, and occasionally governments themselves, not always through the same channel, and not always on the same side of the same conflict. This is the part you have to sit with longest, because it is the part that breaks your previous understanding of how the world works. The organization does not have political allegiances. It does not believe in outcomes. It believes in conflict itself as a financial instrument, and it has been using that instrument with compound patience for longer than you have been alive. Werner is dead because he developed an allegiance. He began favouring one side of a dispute in the southern Caucasus. Genuinely favouring it, you are told, not strategically, not as a play, but because he came to believe in the cause. And he began redirecting resources in ways that were not sanctioned, and the organization corrected for this the way a body corrects for an infection. You are told this not as a threat, though it is one, but as a lesson in the single rule that governs everything. You do not have beliefs, you have positions. Positions can be adjusted. Beliefs get you killed. You take Werner's territory. You are 32 years old. The first year is almost purely mechanical. You learn the architecture of each account, the layers of nominees, the correspondent banking relationships, the specific lawyers and trustees in each jurisdiction who handle documentation and ask no questions because they are paid not to have questions. You learn which accounts move money into legitimate-looking investment funds and which move it directly to procurement agents who specialize in things that do not appear on export manifests. You learn the language, which is a financial language but also a language of implication, the way certain phrases in certain emails mean accelerate and others mean pause, and one specific formulation, which you are taught and which you hope never to use, means that a person has become a problem requiring a solution that is not financial. You make no large decisions in the first year. You process, you route, you verify. You attend 4 meetings in 4 different cities, each one in an ordinary conference room in an ordinary building, and in each one you are the youngest person present by at least 15 years. You do not speak unless asked. You are being assessed and you know it, and the knowing is its own kind of pressure that you learn to carry without letting it show. The first genuine test comes 18 months in, when a conflict you are partially funding, a low-grade insurgency in a country whose name you have been instructed to never put in writing, begins to resolve itself faster than the organization anticipated. A peace negotiation is gaining traction, genuine traction, with international mediation and real political will on both sides. This is a problem because the organization has capital committed to procurement contracts on both sides of that conflict, contracts that require continued hostilities for another 14 months to reach full return. You are asked, not ordered, what you recommend. You understand what you are being asked. You sit with it for one night. You tell yourself that the conflict will not end cleanly regardless, that the mediation process is fragile, that what you are about to recommend is not starting something but merely not stopping something that has its own momentum. These are the first of what will become a long series of framings you construct for yourself, architectures of justification that you build and rebuild over the years, and the fact that you need them at all is the part you do not examine directly for a long time. You recommend a specific financial action, the routing of funds to a third-party media operation that you know will publish specific claims about one of the mediating parties. You do not recommend violence, you recommend information. You tell yourself this distinction matters. The negotiation collapses within 6 weeks. The contracts run to completion. Your standing in the organization improves measurably, and you learn that measurable improvement in this context means you are given access to a second tier of accounts, a tier that operates at roughly 4 times the volume of the first. This is how it works. Every decision that serves the structure expands your position within it, and every expansion of your position increases the complexity and the stakes of the decisions you are asked to make, and the escalation is so gradual and so logical at each individual step that you do not notice, for several years, how far you have travelled from the person who sat in that cafe looking at a cold cup of coffee. By the time you are 38, you are no longer a regional coordinator. The titles do not mean much internally, the organisation does not run on titles, but the scope has changed. You are now involved in the macro-level architecture, the decisions about which conflicts are worth activating and which are worth letting cool, which governments are financially stable enough to remain in power, and which are more useful as transitional situations. You sit in rooms where men and women discuss the funding of elections in emerging democracies, the way other people discuss quarterly projections, and the metric is not ideology, but instability premium, the financial return that comes from backing a candidate, or a movement likely to generate prolonged social disruption. You are good at this. That is the thing you have to be honest with yourself about. You are genuinely, analytically, structurally good at understanding how money flows through conflict and what it produces, and there is a part of your mind that engages with these problems with the same cold clarity you once brought to asset allocation models, and the continuity between those two versions of yourself is something you find, in your more reflective moments, deeply unsettling. At 40, you make the largest single error of your career, and it comes not from greed or ideology, but from something you refuse to call sentiment, though it is. There is a journalist. She is based in a city you visit 3 times a year for reasons unrelated to her. You do not know her professionally. You meet her at an event that has nothing to do with anything you do, and you make the mistake of spending time with her over several months, enough time that she begins to notice things. Not because you tell her anything, but because you are very good at reading people, and she's very good at reading people, and eventually 2 people who are both very good at reading people will read each other. She does not know what she knows. She knows that you are not what you appear to be, and she begins to ask questions in the particular way that journalists do, which is to ask questions they already know the shape of the answer to. You report this yourself. You report it before anyone else notices, which is the only play available to you, because the alternative is that someone else notices first and the response is not a conversation. You are asked what you recommend. This time you do not sleep before answering. You say, she has not published anything. She has not contacted anyone. What she has is inference and curiosity, and inference and curiosity are not evidence. You recommend a financial strategy, the acquisition, through several intermediary layers, of the publication she works for, which creates a structural situation in which her editorial path becomes complicated without anyone touching her. You recommend this, and you know why you are recommending it, and you build your architecture of justification quickly and efficiently because you have had years of practice. And the woman continues her career and never publishes what she suspected, and you do not see her again, because you are not a person who gets to see her again. This is the cost of the thing you have built, or allowed yourself to become part of building. Not the geopolitical cost, not the abstract human cost of conflicts prolonged or governments destabilized. You have long since found ways to place those costs in a category of mind that does not interface with your daily function. The personal cost is different. The personal cost is the steady erosion of the life you might have had, The options foreclosed one by one, the relationships that cannot exist because you cannot be known, the version of yourself that Werner saw potential in, and that has been, over 15 years, steadily replaced by someone more useful and more dangerous and more alone. You are 43 now. You have access to capital flows that exceed the GDP of several nations you have helped to destabilize. You have never fired a weapon. You have never been in a room when violence happened. You have maintained perfect procedural distance from every outcome you have contributed to, and this distance is both your protection and the specific nature of your culpability, that you understood exactly what you were doing and chose the language of finance to do it, because financial language is clean and violence is not, and you told yourself for years that this distinction was meaningful. There are currently 4 active conflicts in which the organization is funding both primary parties. You know this not as a moral fact but as a portfolio fact, and the ease with which you hold that knowledge is the thing that keeps you awake on the nights when the architecture of justification develops cracks. There is a 5th situation, a country and a region you now oversee fully, where a genuine humanitarian catastrophe is developing, where the conflict has exceeded the organization's projected parameters, and where the civilian cost is running at a level that is drawing international attention in ways that create operational risk. You have been asked to assess whether the risk of continued involvement outweighs the remaining return. You have been doing this work for 11 years at the level where the assessments are yours to make. You know exactly what kind of analysis is being requested. You know the language in which to write a recommendation that routes additional funds to a ceasefire mediation process, a recommendation that would serve both a financial purpose, reducing exposure, and an outcome that would be by any ordinary measure less catastrophic for the people inside it. You know that this recommendation would be accepted. You know it because you have learned to read the organization as well as you have learned to read anything, and you know that at this stage it values your judgment enough that a well-constructed case would carry. You have not written the recommendation yet. You are sitting with it the way you sat with the drive you found in Werner's office 12 years ago, with the particular stillness of someone who understands that the choice in front of them is going to determine something they cannot fully calculate in advance. The difference is that this time there is no woman with flat hands on a table to tell you the 2 ways it ends. The 2 ways are entirely internal now. They have been internal for years. That is what it means to have been inside this long enough that the organization is no longer something outside you. It is something you carry, something that has become structural in the way you think, in the way you assess risk and value and consequence. You open the document, you begin to type, and you tell yourself, as you have told yourself before and will tell yourself again, that this decision is different, that this is the one where the framing is not a justification but the truth, and you do not know yet. And this is the thing you can never know, not at 43, not at any age, whether you are right. The cursor blinks. The money is already moving somewhere. It always is.